Hey everyone, welcome to Patriot Resale Box, where I give you my commentary on the news of the day as reported by the Wall Street Journal. First up, more national security and diplomatic and military officials testified before House of Representatives yesterday about the about Trump's Ukraine call. Blah 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 blah. They some of the people who testified this far actually were on the call, some weren't, which begs the question: why are people being called forth as witnesses if they didn't even technically witness the supposed crime? Doesn't make That makes no sense. No other court for any other crime would possibly allow that. Like, if you're a guy who called and testified for I don't know, like a murder or something, you say like, yeah, I heard from a guy who heard from a guy who said that this guy was murdered and this guy did it. They'd be like, get out of here, right? But no, according to Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi, totally legal, totally fair to have people be called as witnesses to something they didn't actually witness, which makes them, by definition, not a witness. How hard is that to understand? They're not witnesses, and yet they're being called forth as such. Now, as I've probably said before, that sets a dangerous, like phenomenally dangerous precedent. Because what if a Republican House of Representatives decided to do a Democratic president? Liberal heads would explode. But apparently it's fine for Democrats to do it to a Republican president. Then the House of Representatives passed a short-term spending bill, which, given how little Congress gets done these days, passing even a short-term spending bill is a Herculean accomplishment, right? I mean, they can't agree on anything, and they passed a bill that will cover up their spending through December 20th. Yay! They passed a bill that lasted a month. They're supposed to do it for a year. It's crazy how they can't agree. And obviously, one of the main issues is Border Patrol. Why can Democratic lawmakers not wrap their heads around the fact that we need secure borders? Otherwise, it's not a country. A country is according to the Treaty of Montevideo in 1933, a state, like a country, has to have set borders, a clearly defined population, so that everyone within those borders, or everyone who's a citizen of that country, and a government. We need borders, like set borders that can be enforced. Otherwise, there is no United States. That it just, I don't know, like nothing. Then a new rule that had been like issued by the Department of Homeland Security before, but now it's taking effect. It's it's a rule that Trump got Guatemala to agree to, that asylum seekers must first go to Guatemala before, if they're passing through Guatemala to get to the United States, before they apply for asylum in the U.S. So, you know, most of the migrants these days are not coming from Mexico, but from like farther down in Central America, and so the new rule says that because Guatemala agreed to consider itself a safe state, they can people can legally apply for asylum there, and applying for asylum in the United States would be illegal if they pass through Guatemala first. And given Guatemala's position on the globe, yeah, it's like you'd have to pass through. If you're coming from south of Guatemala, you have to go through Guatemala to get to Mexico, according to the map. So, yeah, now it's technically a safe state, and if you pass through Guatemala to apply for asylum in the United States, then you are committing a crime, officially. There's another article about how listing how often presidential candidates use filler words, like not just or but like also like phrases like stuff like, the fact is, let's be clear, at the end of the day, first of all, here's the deal, the truth is, and then Kamala Harris's thing, let me tell you, or I will tell you. Like those kinds of like fillers that they use to collect their thoughts. Because think about it, the nature of a presidential debate, they get very little time to say what they want. So So it's hard for them to think on the fly like that. So they have to use those fillers. I mean, it's just gonna happen, so that they can collect their thoughts. But apparently, Joe Biden, out of all the presidential candidates, has used the most filler phrases. He uses about 5.8 filler phrases for every 1,000 words he says during the presidential debates. And then you have Harris next at 5.3, Sanders at 4.7. You keep going down a little bit, and you get all the way to the bottom where you have Warren at 1.5 and Buttigieg at 1.3. So Warren and Buttigieg are very quick on the uptake, whereas for Biden, Harris, and Sanders, they have to think about it a little more. And it also lists like the candidates' favored phrases, or at least the ones that's most used. Like Joe Biden, his is the fact is, and where's some of the other ones? I believe it mentioned. Oh yeah, as I said, Kamala Harris uses some variation of "tell you," like "I will tell you" or "let me tell you," and then Bernie Sanders, his favorite is like "by the way," "second of all," "let's be clear." So yeah, it's just a list of showing like trying to use this to analyze like how good of a public speaker they are, but showing just how quickly they can think. Because if you want someone who can think quickly, if you want someone to be president, because there's a lot of situations where you're gonna have to think quickly, and the debate stage is sort of like a practice run for a lot of things, including that. There's also an article about how retailers and other companies are becoming more and more politicized as they're, especially since now like 60% of 1,000 Americans surveyed last year in a study about whether or not people choose their stores based on their politics, and about 60% said they would choose, switch, avoid, or boycott a brand based on its stance on societal issues, like anything from gun control to LGBTQ plus rights to abortion rights, etc., etc., etc. They would choose nearly 60%. That's up from 47% the year before, 2017. And there's a chart showing just how far like the consumer base for certain companies has moved politically. Like Chick-fil-A used to be like dead center, like equal up like about like let's see, yeah, it was about like 50-50 as far as like Democrats and Republicans eating at Chick-fil-A, but now it's plunged way towards the Republican side. So I mean, I as you can probably guess, given the whole how Chick-fil-A makes the news for being bigoted somehow. Then CNN obviously moved far left, so is the NBA, and then some of them actually crossed like the ideological divide, like Wrangler, and from this day I was like from 2004 to 2018. Between that time, Wrangler, the clothing company, moved from political left to political right. Fox News went pretty much the opposite direction as CNN, like almost the exact opposite. GMC started almost dead even, but not as dead even as Chick-fil-A, and then swung to the right. Same with NASCAR. And then Volkswagen actually crossed over to the political left. So yeah, it's a bunch of brands that have become somewhat politicized based on their stance on issues. And so it begs the question: should we be choosing companies based on their based on our stance on politics and societal issues, and based on theirs? I think that we should be choosing companies like, well, okay, on the one hand, when you buy a product from a company, if they do donate to these causes, then you're indirectly supporting these causes. I mean, I can see that. I can see that where that concern comes in. But on the other hand, I think we should mainly, I mean, yeah, while it's good to take a stand on issues, we also should be mindful of the fact that, like, sometimes maybe that company is, like, the best company. Maybe we just need to put politics and aside when it comes to buying stuff, and buy stuff based on, like, the quality of the product. Like I understand not buying, like, say, Nike because they use slave labor, or for like Nestle because they use slave labor, or maybe Volkswagen because they cheated on their emissions reviews. But that's like business ethics. So when you cross into politics, it feels like it takes it to a whole other level, and it seems almost completely different. So I think it's all kind of silly to me. When we hop over to the op-ed section, and as I mentioned Chick-fil-A just a minute ago, they said they'll stop. They're trying to move to not be political anymore. They're the latest victim of the progressive mob. So like in in 2012, it says in 2012, the CEO, who's a committed Christian, sinned against the progressive ethos by expressing support for the traditional view of marriage, mind you, was 3 years before the Supreme Court said same-sex marriage is a constitutional right. And so, and and then now the company said they're no longer going to give to organizations that have been branded as like hate groups, like anything from Fellowship of Christian Athletes to Salvation Army, like all these charities and organizations that have that support views that are not in line with the progressive viewpoint. So, I mean, there's two ways to see this. Like the op-ed, I agree. It's sad they're a victim to it. It's almost a little cowardly too. But then again, Chick-fil-A is a business, so I mean, it's understandable that if they like for them to do this, and like I do understand where they're coming from, because if they kept it up, then there's a chance that they could lose all their business, their stores could be destroyed by progressive mobs, all that kind of stuff. So by trying to stay neutral in politics, I suppose Chick-fil-A is they're doing what's best to protect their business. So on the one hand, I think it's sad that they've been bullied like this. On the other hand, I totally understand and support their decision. And next up, there's an article about how charter schools are so vilified by the Democratic Party, and it points and they're like charter schools drain cities of money, charter schools this, charter schools that. First of all, they don't drain cities of money any more than people moving out of state do or out of the district. Like when someone moves out of school district, they're not paying any more taxes to fund the school. So why don't the people complain then? Why aren't Democrats wanting to lock people in districts so they can fund schools, right? Well, there's all the usual complaints about charter schools, you've probably heard a million times, but they're like mainly about the money and how they're not public schools, but they actually are public schools. They just have more freedom from the school system bureaucracy, but that also comes with a lot more accountability. Like public schools, if they suck, they're not going to get closed, or at least not very easily. Charter schools, they screw up, they're shut down. And a lot of schools actually have to save space and money. They put district schools and charter schools in the same building. Especially there's a lot of schools that have been abandoned, so that's actually a good use of space. But it says the main issue, like the main reason why Democrats rail against him, is because one of the biggest, if not like the biggest, interest group that affects the Democratic Party is the teachers' unions. Thanks JFK for legalizing public sector unions. FDR himself was opposed to it because he said, well, private sector unions are good to negotiate deals between workers and business owners. Public sector unions would be bad because they can effectively hold the government hostage, since public sector employees typically provide much more essential services. Like if car manufacturers go on strike like GM did a while back, then it's like, okay, fine for consumers. I mean, you can always just go buy another car, or from someone that's not GM. But if the policemen were to go on strike, if they unionized, or if the firemen, the garbage men, that'd be a disaster, right? They think about how quickly a city would plunge into chaos if their public sector unions went on strike. And that has happened. Like, it's very disruptive for schools to go on strike, and the children they're supposed to be learning are the unfortunate victims. But because of this is why there's so much, as I said before, why many cities and states have such a huge public debt problem. It's because teachers can lobby for gigantic pensions, and yet they still claim to be underpaid, which makes absolutely no sense. Yeah, it's like the main reason that they're against charter schools is because they're being paid off by the American Federation of Teachers and other big unions. Last op-ed I want to point out is one entitled "Bloomberg Grovels Over Stop and Frisk." So, Rudy Giuliani starting in 1994 when he became mayor, he's now Trump's personal lawyer. Like when he became mayor of New York City, he tried to clean up the streets, like because New York and a lot of the big cities were a massive crime when he came to power, and so he bolstered the police force, increased the amount of patrols, allowed stop and frisk, that kind of stuff. Then Bloomberg, when he became mayor, he also supported stop and frisk. Now he's garnered criticism ever since he said, "Oh, I'm thinking about running for president," and so now he's apologizing for it. When really stop and frisk is a good policy if you think it's like all stop and frisk is it allows police to search people who look suspicious. I mean, if you're a cop and you see some guy like maybe he's got his hands in his hoodie pockets, hood up, kind of looking around, all sketchy, you know what I mean, right? Like shady looking guy in a rough part of town. Police officers may like I would if I were a cop, I would have some reason to be suspicious. And I'd at least be like, I'd at least say, hey, I'd at least go up to him and say, hey, what are you doing, pal? And if he was not cooperating, then yeah, search him. That stop and frisk, like it doesn't violate the Fourth Amendment because like the rule about warrants, because according to the law, like you don't need a warrant if you have probable cause. You see some sketchy looking character walking down the street, a cop would have probable cause to search them. And this opponent says that stop and frisk, along with increased police patrols and whatnot, actually did make cities a lot safer. But now the social justice warriors are making it harder for police to patrol. And it's making our cities much more dangerous. So, really, progressives, if you want to fix the cities, then you might want to allow some tough on crime laws and don't be like Kamala Harris criticizing Joe Biden over crime laws. Actually, you should be supporting them because otherwise your city would be a freaking disaster. That's all I've got for on this time on Patriot vs. Soapbox. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great daily content.